All right, now we're going to head out to Walden Pond, made famous, of course, by Thoreau's famous book, marvelous book, which you had the pleasure of reading, Walden. And Thoreau was anti-statue in general. He didn't believe in people being commemorated that way, but despite that, someone made this bronze statue of him. But what's really nice out at Walden is an exact replica of Thoreau's cabin. And as you know from reading Walden, it was pretty easy to make one because he described it in such great detail. And there are some companies actually that you can actually buy the kit to make your own Thoreau's cabin. And I think that would be pretty cool to do someday. There's the side view. There's me knocking to see if anybody's home. Oh, somebody's home. Not really. There's the stove that he got, I think, in his second winter he was there. He preferred the fireplace because he said you can always see a face in a fire, but wood stoves are much more efficient for heating and cooking. There's me sitting in the cabin. It's not tiny. It's really all one person would need. He had a little hatch in the floor and kept the food in a kind of in the hole in the ground where there'd be a good even temperature. He lived there alone, though he had people visit. Now let me clear something up here. You're going to meet somebody in life, and you're going to mention Thoreau, and they're going to go, Thoreau is just a complainer. He went home and his mother cooked his meals and did his laundry. He didn't face nature out there at his little house in Walden. And that's all true. He didn't claim that he was roughing it out there in the wilderness. It's not. It's a pretty good, I mean, I don't know how far, maybe a mile walk into, which is easy, into Concord. And Thoreau walked all sorts of places. He never claimed to have roughed it out in the woods all by himself. That's just not there. So a lot of people have decided that that's what Thoreau did. And then when they come to find out that in fact he did not live way out in the woods by himself, he was just lived in a cabin a little outside of town by himself, but he had visitors and he went into town. People are sometimes very disappointed. They think he's a fake or a fraud. He never claimed what a lot of people have attributed to him claiming to have done. So recently, maybe a few years ago, and you can Google it, there was an article in the New Yorker called Pond Scum. And it was basically a hit job on Thoreau. And it went through the same old tired stuff. You know, he didn't do this, blah, blah, blah. And it's really a terrible article. And I'm disappointed in the New Yorker magazine for running it. But anyway, a perfectly serviceable cabin where Thoreau visited people and sometimes often went in to see his mother and his family in the town of Concord. He was not out in the middle of nowhere. Never claimed to be either. Now, just to show you the reach of Thoreau, when I was there were people there from Korea. I'm pretty sure Korea. They appeared to be Korean and they sounded what I think is Korean, and they did not speak English. And I know this because I did try to communicate with them a little bit, but they came from literally the other side of the globe, Korea, and visiting Walden Pond was on their United States itinerary. So think about that. When I was in there, this man, he was very nice. He said to me, "Look good, you look good there." And so when he went in, I said, "You look good there." But fascinating to see people from Korea visiting Walden Pond. And there he is contemplating Thoreau. There's the rest of his party. And there's Walden Pond. This actually looks a little bigger, honestly, than it is. And it's a good-sized pond, not quite a small lake. Very still, very beautiful. Land there would be extremely valuable. It was almost developed maybe 30 years ago with houses and condos. And when the former Eagle singer and drummer Don Henley led a fight to save it. So luckily now it should be preserved forever. But very valuable land around Concord in the suburb of Boston. There's a lot of swimming there. Thoreau liked to swim there. I think it's great that people swim there. There's someone swimming, not me. There's me. There's these little places where you can walk down to the water. This is probably around 2007, 2008. Um, had a little more hair then. Actually, I look heavy in that picture. Then we get to the site. So this is many famous quotations. Walden is highly quotable. It's a lot harder to all put together in your head when you're reading it, but it's highly quotable. Here's one of the most quotable. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life. True. He lived a simple life out there, lived deliberately. Deliberately means thoughtfully. Everything is decided, how much I'm going to spend on this and that. And if I could not learn what I had to teach and see if I could not learn what I had to teach and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. So he goes out there to really just think about the essential elements of life. And of course, a lot of it, if you read the economy section, it's about money. This is America. Our lives are very much comprised of money. And one of my favorite spots, things that Thoreau does there in Walden, is he and his friend are going to go to Fitchburg, a neighboring town. And his friend says, let's take the train. And Thoreau says, I don't have time to take the train. I'll walk. His friend's like, what are you talking about? It's quicker on the train. And Thoreau says, to pay for the train, I would have to work an entire day. Trains were slower then. And then ride the train. He says, on the next day, he said, I can walk there in a day. So think about that, right? Our lives are composed of hours we prostitute out a lot of those hours to our job. That's what I'm doing right now. All work is prostitution. Always remember that. When you spend money, you have to work someplace to earn it. When you're working, you are not allowed to be yourself. You have to be someone else. You do not have freedom when you are at your job, right? You do not have freedom when you are at your job. So Thoreau lived very frugally. His whole section in economy and the budget he goes through is essential. You guys all need to get a handle, and you need to understand that every time you spend money, you have to sell some of yourself to somebody else at a job. And before you spend that money, you got to think, if you want to give up freedom, the only thing you're made of is time, right? We have a set amount of time on this earth. I'm going to live 91 years. I just did an online life expectancy calculator this morning. And that's all I've got. And the more time I spend at work, the more time I'm not doing what I want to do. So, however, obviously, I like my job, so that makes it all that much better. A tradition that I've never participated in, because I always forget, people bring a rock from wherever they're coming from and leave it at the house cabin site. And there's the cabin site. It was sort of discovered, I think in the 1940s. We'll see a plaque in a minute. So you can go to this exact spot where Thoreau's cabin was. There's me standing at the site of Thoreau's cabin. And it was the spot was discovered November 11th, 1945. And that's where the chimney was. That was helpful finding it. And that's the view from the cabin down to Walden Pond. So that's great. Walden Pond, definitely a great place to visit and go for a walk and visit and get spiritual with Thoreau. Another can't miss place in Concord is the Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. Not to be confused with Sleepy Hollow in Tarrytown, which is associated with Washington Irving. This is Sleepy Hollow Cemetery in Concord. And if you like visiting authors' graves like I do, it's Mecca. You can visit a whole bunch in one spot. It's one of the first cemeteries that was built to be like a park. Very beautiful on this very special little rolling hilly area right outside the Concord, the center of Concord. And all kinds of great people buried there. Here's Emerson's stone. Here's Hawthorne's stone. His wife actually joined him in 2006, I think. I wish I'd gone out to see her buried, but must have been working that day. But she was actually buried in England, and they brought her body over. And here's Louisa May Alcott's grave, and you notice that she does have a flag and Civil War veteran marker, Louisa May Alcott. Here's Hawthorne's daughter, Una, great name, Una Hawthorne. If I ever get another dog, I might name, and it's a female, I might name her Una. Here's the kind of the big stone for Thoreau's family. His family was very devoted to him, very supportive of his writing. His father was a pencil manufacturer in Concord, and Thoreau really helped develop the pencil and the process to make them, which is very helpful. His father, John, his mother, Cynthia, his brother, who he was very devoted to and heartbroken. Thoreau's brother cut himself shaving with a rusty razor and died 2 weeks later. And Thoreau's sister was very devoted to him and keeping his writing alive after he died. Thoreau was not, he was somewhat well known in his time, but not really at all, not like now. At one point, I think something like this, he published his book, and the publisher printed like 800 copies, and 200 of them sold, and Thoreau got the other 600. And he wrote in his journal, I think it was his journal, I have a lot, my library has expanded by 600. My library is now up to 700 books, 600 of which I've written myself. Of course, they're all the same book. And there's Louisa May Alcott's little stone. There's Thoreau's stone, very simple. It's actually the third gravestone that he's had. There's a story there. And it is tiny. It is perfect because Thoreau would not want a big stone. Look how tiny that gravestone is. That's a great picture. There's Thoreau's cabin again, just to remind you of it. And here's a painting I came across on somebody's website. I can't remember the artist's name now. That's terrible. And she kind of puts things together. She put together Thoreau with his famous quotation on the board behind him, "I'd rather sit on a pumpkin and have it all to myself than be crowded on a velvet cushion." And the artist took her father's dachshund and added the dachshund in. And of course, I one year decided to recreate this myself with my fake Abraham Lincoln beard, which doubles as a Thoreau beard, by the way. And there's my beloved dachshund, who is no longer with us, Barley. And we recreated this in the College Writing Center. So one of the highlights of my life was recreating that painting. So there you have it. So there's your free trip to Concord, Massachusetts. A great place to go. You could do it in a day. Hey, you guys are young. You could hop in the car at 5 a.m. and do a whole day out there. But they're nice places to stay. Maybe go out there and camp. You guys are young. But Concord, Massachusetts, to me, the capital, Mecca of 19th century American literature. And hope you enjoyed the little trip. And at least you got to see the size of Thoreau's cabin.